Hello, brave parents raising teens. It certainly does require bravery to raise teens in these trying times. And I just really want to affirm your willingness to stand with them in deep connection, because that relationship is what will see them through. It prevents many risky behaviors. And that is not to say that if your teen is experimenting with risky behaviors, that it is your fault. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the importance of your deep connection with your teen is primary to their learning about how to navigate all of the crazy variables they're dealing with today, such as screen time and bullying and academic pressures that have never been on this age group before. And your relationship can help them weather those storms of life about growing up, which is hard enough anyway, but certainly in tumultuous times when we don't have the social supports that we used to. So I want to talk to you about how to set up guardrails of protection for those risky behaviors. And in my Facebook group, Brave Parents Raising Teens, we've been talking about guardrails and boundaries, and they are two different things. Boundaries comes when we feel that our personal boundaries have been crossed. Excuse me, such as, ouch, I don't deserve to be yelled at. I was having a great day. Injecting humor into setting that boundary, saying you cannot treat me with verbal abuse or with certainly physical abuse. But a boundary says, I feel X about your behavior. And you use the power of the relationship to set that boundary, to hold your own personal boundaries. Rules are when we have a discussion about it's important to, for example, have full REM sleep, turn off the blue screens, blue light before an hour before bedtime. That's what the research says. So I want to talk to us about staying healthy and turning the phones in an hour before bedtime. And your teen may have some pressure that they put on you about that. That's not fair. I use my phone for homework, those kinds of protests. And you can say, and I appreciate your opinion. Let's talk about how we can work this out. But I'd like to try it for a while. When you set those expectations, and they get a voice in it, not veto power, but a voice and vote, they're more likely to be on board with boundary setting that is conducive for health for the whole family. When it's your personal boundary, like being yelled at or, emotionally dumped on because your teen had a bad day, you speak up and say, that hurts, or you want to talk about, with an invitation, an open-ended question invitation about, you want to talk about what's really going on with you, because I haven't even seen you all day. Those kinds of practicing holding our own personal boundaries of integrity about how we want to be treated is certainly helpful to gaining their respect and showing them how to respect themselves. Having said that, there's something called a guardrail, and that is a point at which you do not go past. And I had a guardrail about drinking and driving with my teens. I had a guardrail about that first phone call, that I was their escape route. If they were in a situation with peer pressure that they didn't know how to handle, they could text me, is grandma coming today? Or some code word that we would set up in advance of that time, so that they knew that I would come and get them, and they could blame me as the heavy to deal with the peer pressure, that, oh yeah, my mom wants me to be there for when my grandma arrives, even though the grandma was light years away and didn't have a scheduled visit. It was a way to deal with peer pressure. I set up guardrails about chemical use. We talked about that I came from an alcoholic home. They had a genetic predispositions towards addiction. that they needed to be careful with experimentation when they chose to do that, if they chose to do that. Of course, I would prefer that they didn't. I was able to say that. But I said definitively, teens and developing minds do not drink or use chemicals because, number one, it's illegal. And number two, I'm talking about illegal for minors to drink or use. And number two, it harms health for developing minds to use chemicals. So I had a hard, fast guardrail there. This is for your protection. And it wasn't up for discussion, and that really does actually comfort teens to have that structure to rely on, to have the first phone call rule when you feel pressure to not get into a car with someone who is under the influence, that there are no rides home. We also had a hard, fast guardrail about if you change locations and you are away from me, I need to hear about it. I need to know where you are at all times. This was before the 360 app. So guardrails are things that you get to put in place. Boundary setting are things that you do to state how you want to be treated in the interaction with your teen. So I want to combat the perception that conscious parenting from empathy, holding up the relationship as primary, and deep connection as being the inoculation against risky behavior, all of those things have nothing to do with permissive parenting. You still hold up these hard, fast guardrails. Think about, when a kid's learning how to bowl for the first time and they put those bumpers in the alleyways, it keeps the bowling ball on the alley, on the lane. That's exactly what we want to do with our guardrails. There are some things that are non-negotiable that are hard, fast protections. And I would talk about them from the point of not rules, but protections. I use the line, I trust me, I trust you and your good judgment. I don't trust others to have your best interest at heart necessarily. And so that's why these guardrails are in place. They can still push against them. You can have those conversations. And conscious communication will help you have those co-created conversations. I would love to chat with you more about that if you'd like to learn more about it. But here's the permission slip, parents, to set the guardrails to protect your teens.